Hello everybody, it's Colin Ellis here and welcome to another episode of the Culture and Coffee podcast. Got distracted halfway through there because I thought I start this podcast in exactly the same way. I think I do anyway, every single week, so I should come up with something different. Maybe introduce myself as somebody else. Maybe that's the thing that I should do. Hey everybody, it's Ron Tappet here and welcome to the Culture and Coffee. I'm not quite sure who Ron Tappet is. Hello, everybody. How are you? How was the week? 40 days until Christmas. It is Monday, the 15th of November, 2021. Almost about to put the lid on what has been another bizarre year. I find myself talking a lot at the minute about the difference between hybrid and flexible. It still seems to be very confusing. If you want to, one of my previous episodes was on, I think I called it Hybrid is Not the New Flexible. It's definitely worth listening to because there is so much confusion. So a couple of things, I think, with regards to that. So I did a spot on Sky News and I have to admit, I've kind of enjoyed doing the TV stuff, even though I have a face for radio. I enjoyed the TV stuff. But I did a spot on there and, the way that I described hybrid was that hybrid is very ad hoc, whereas flexible is kind of a semi-permanent agreement that you have to get signed and agree with management. I'm not sure everyone's ready for hybrid yet. If you don't understand the differences between the two, you're definitely not ready. Also, and I'm talking to a lot of clients about this at the minute, is that if you're thinking of moving to a hybrid model, then you're better to wait until the work at home and the stay-at-home orders have kind of ended, which they have in some countries. Here in Australia, they're planned to end probably within the next week. Definitely in New South Wales and Victoria, they're planned to end within the next week with restrictions being lifted as we get to 90% vaccinations, which is just incredible. I marvel at that, given our slow take-up. But yeah, only then will we really know. I've also spoken to 3 clients this week who were like, should we sell our office spaces? Well, no, not yet. You don't really know. Anyway, so yeah, it's been talking a lot about that. It's 2 weeks now until I start delivering in person again, and I am pretty excited. In fact, all of the inquiries, and we've had a fair few inquiries over the last 10 days or so, which is great, have been for in-person work. I think, as I've said all along, there are some things that are better done in person. It's not to say you can't do them virtually. Of course you can. But I think that many teams are looking to bring people together to reconnect. And what they don't want to do is waste it, right? You don't want to kind of meet for the first time in 2 years and just have some glib, rubbish thing. Anyway. So yes, looking forward. Can't wait for that. This is getting match fit. I'm fitter now than I have been in years and years and years. So yeah, I can't wait to get out there. Anyway, this week's coffee is a Costa Rican Volcan Azul, which is roasted by Vacation Coffee here in Melbourne, Australia. And we're flying to Sydney on Friday. Getting on a plane for the first time, so I'm going to try and buy some New South Wales coffee while I'm there. New South Wales, I'm coming for you. This particular coffee has, let me just get the bag here. That's me shaking the beans. It has notes of orange, blackberry, and rum. So let me just... yummy. Definitely blackberry. Very nice, very, very nice indeed. Now, prior to writing the podcast, the only thing I really knew about Costa Rica, 3 things. 1, it's in Central America, I knew that. 2, the fictional island, Isla Nublar, is located off the coast of Costa Rica in one of my all-time favourite books, Jurassic Park. If you've never read Jurassic Park, forget the movie. The movie was good, right? Because we'd never see. I must have talked about this before. But if you've never read the book, read the book. It's brilliant. I mean, my favourite book is On the Road by Jack Kerouac, and I still plan to do that trip one day. But my second favourite book is Jurassic Park. I've read it 6 times. A book is good when you read it more than once. And I've read Jurassic Park a bunch of times. I love it. So that's the second thing. And the third thing, Costa Rica is the home country of Brian Oviedo. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Colin, really? Brian Oviedo is from Costa Rica? Yes, he is. Brian Oviedo, who played for my football team, Everton. and whose most famous contribution was to score the winning goal at Old Trafford, home of Man United in 2013. I can still picture it right now, that goal. But I'm drinking a Costa Rican coffee because Lewis Chin, who is a member of the Culture Makers community, that's culturemakers.community, got in touch with me via LinkedIn and was like, dude, like, this is not what he said. This is in my head how it was. Dude, sorry about this, Lewis. If you're listening, I'm completely butchering your LinkedIn. Dude, you should drink some Costa Rican coffee. Get on it. And I honestly, I hadn't seen any. And then went for lunch this week, and there it was, some Costa Rican filter coffee beans. So I got them. So I messaged Lewis and said, all right, give us your top 5 things. Give us your top 5 things. Yeah. So I met Lewis at Culture Makers community, and then I did a speech for Volvo Poland, where he was working at the time, which was awesome. It was one of those late night speeches, which I absolutely love. But now he's back home in Costa Rica. So I said, Lewis, if you kind of tell me some things about Costa Rica, I'll share them with the people on the podcast. It's always better to hear from locals, right? It's always better to hear the facts. So here are the 5 things. Number 1, Costa Rica has no army. Now, any dictators listening to the podcast, and you know you are, this is not an invitation to invade Costa Rica. Don't be like, wait, what? It's got no army? Why didn't no one say, look, lad, they got no army. Let's some boys together. Let's get down there. Let's do them, lad. Yeah, so it's not an invitation to invade. But as Lewis says, as crazy as it sounds, it's true. Costa Rica decided to cut its military off and focus on education and health instead. How awesome is that? If only the rest of the world could do that. I'm not joking. If only the rest, instead of playing these kind of my toys are bigger than your toys game. Number 2, and clearly playing into my Britishness here, the weather here is terrific. So like as soon as I read that, I'm like, right, let's add that to the holiday list. Weather here is terrific. And since we're a small country, you can be in the Caribbean coast in the morning, or if you're in America, the Caribbean. The Caribbean coast in the morning, go and visit some volcanoes or mountains in the afternoon, hence good coffee. And at night, enjoy the sunset in the Pacific. I mean, how awesome does all that sound? That just sounds like you'd be bouncing from coast to coast. So that sounds fabulous. So number 3, just take another drink here. Number 3, something really important is the people. In general, people like to help. Even if they don't speak your language, they will try and help you. Although what I would say, and this is not Lewis, this is me. If you're in a foreign country, and we're getting to the point where we're ready to travel again, hopefully. If you're in a foreign country, at least give it a crack. Like, even Clark Griswold gave it a go in European Vacation. Like, you can do it. You can totally. There's a great Steve Martin sketch where he tries to speak French in France, and he orders it. He's like, you ordered a shoe with cheese, and I want you to massage my grandmother. But at least give it a crack, right? But here in Costa Rica, they help you out, which is fabulous. It's fabulous. Costa Ricans are flexible. Back to Lewis. Costa Ricans are flexible and always try to learn new stuff. I wish I could say that about Britain. Number 4, they are focusing on green technology and sustainable energy, which frankly, having read all about COP26, which has been in the news, that's fabulous news. Because the country I live in right now seems to be doing everything in its power not to be doing that. But don't worry, they've got a plan, right? Yeah, but have they really? I mean, I know what a plan looks like, and I've yet to see one. And yet, I mean, I always say I don't want to get political in these things, but when you see the commitments they made at COP26, it's really not a commitment at all. It's really not a commitment at all. There's no courage. And you realise just how much these so-called world leaders are in it for personal gain. Because they're thinking of their mates and who they're getting their backhanders off and who's supporting their campaign and how much money they're going to... I mean, and it's less about the world and more about ego anyway. enough. Back to Lewis again. Lewis, you should do this podcast, mate. You'd stay way more on it than I am. Number 5. The Costa Rican motto is pura vida, which in English is something like pura life. And it's basically knowing how to enjoy life. And we use it for everything. Greetings, asking how you are, expressing how we're feeling, saying how nice a person is, etc. Which just sounds fabulous. And I wish you all a pura vida, and especially you, Lewis. Thank you so much for doing that. And people, if you can get to Costa Rica, do it. Lovely people, lovely weather, lovely coffee. I mean, that's a perfect combination. All right, this week I am talking about how to set great expectations. Now, of course, whenever you hear great expectations, like you immediately think of Charles Dickens, right? Immediately. And Great Expectations was his 13th novel, and only his second after David Copperfield, which he narrated in the first person. I don't know about you guys, but I never really had much of a love of books at school. I mean, some people did. I didn't really, but then everything for me when I was growing up was about football, just football. And yet now I just can't get enough of it. Like, I love reading. Like, when I think about Christmas, I think about somewhere warm, sunny, maybe with a beer or a highball, which is like whiskey and soda water, and a book. Yeah. And I love reading about old England from writers such as Dickens and George Orwell, and like The Road to Wigan Pier is brutal, George Orwell. But anyway, Great Expectations, of course, is the book that gave us Pip and Miss Havisham and the escaped convict, Abel Magwitch. Anyway, it's not a book podcast. So if it's not a book podcast, it would be pretty rubbish. I would set a different tone, wouldn't I? Charles John Hoffman Dickens was born in Hampshire in 1812 and is now buried in Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey in London. No, thank you. All right. Great Expectations. Most of what doesn't work in workplace cultures is a result of people not knowing how to set great expectations, to be perfectly honest with you. I've talked in the past on the podcast about the fact that we assume managers have skills. We just assume, often we promote them based on technical ability, not necessarily emotional or managerial capability. And we just think that they automatically know how to set expectations. We think that they automatically know how to create high-performing teams. They don't. And so these are skills that need to be taught. These need to be part of every leadership program. Stop focusing on the stuff that people won't use. Give them the practical things that they need to do. And when managers are good at setting expectations, you're far more likely to hit any kind of targets that you have. You're far more likely to create cultures that are vibrant and where people can succeed. You're far more likely to create the kind of environments which feel safe to work in. That's how important this particular skill is around setting expectations. And so you can't just assume people have it. You need to make sure that you're teaching people how to do it. Essentially, it's a 4-step process. Now, I'm not big on acronyms. I haven't been a public servant working in government for 8 years. Like, it's full of them. It really, really is. But I came up with one for setting expectations because, when I thought about my own work and the things that I wanted to teach people, this was one of them, because it's such a big part of culture. And so for me, it's a 4-step process, and the acronym is ACDC. Look, I like my music, all right? And still opportunity to rock out. ACDC. So what I'm going to do for the rest of the podcast is walk you through what ACDC means. And then by the end of it, you'll be able to set great expectations yourself. All right? You'll be able to do it. And you should do it like immediately. If you're listening to it in the morning, and I know a good proportion of people do it. Just try it. With all these podcasts, take one thing. Don't try and change everything, but, try and do one thing. So the A stands for articulate. So you've got to be able to articulate something to yourself before you can communicate it to somebody else. So this means that you have to spend time planning. This means you have to spend time thinking. This means you have to spend a little bit of time looking at the end of the week. What does it look like? What are the outputs that you're expecting from the team and from individuals within the team, right? In some instances, you're going to have to persuade people. So, persuasion is the process, if that's the right word, of getting someone to do or believe something. So, but you can't persuade them if you're thinking off the top of your head. You can't be like, so this week, what have you got on your list? Right, yeah, you need to do that. Yeah, that's really important. Oh, there was something, what did I want? Like, just the worst kind of manager when you're thinking off the top of your head. Now, I used to spend Sunday evening, I still do spend Sunday evening planning, actually, I mentioned this before, but as a manager, I would always look at the week ahead. What I wanted to do was come in on Monday morning, kind of with my day and my week plan, so that I know that when I sat down with for my 20-minute catch-ups with my team, that I could just go through the ACDC, and at the end of that, everybody knew where they were, we were good to go, and then I could just check in during the week. It's not a set and forget, but, at least I'd done that. And the first part of that was just spending that time articulating it to myself and recognizing that different people consume information in different ways, and I'll get to communicate next. All right. So part of that, I'm thinking, well, what's the rational information? What's the facts, the figures, the logic? And then what's the emotional stuff? What's thinking about, well, how do I want people to feel? What's the value of doing something? Who should they be working with? And so that articulation piece is super important, because I suppose the other benefit, it gives you complete certainty as a manager that not only do you understand what needs to get done, but you understand everybody's role within that. Now, it works best if you've got a multidisciplinary team where you can kind of share work. And I remember one of my teams, one of the last teams that I managed, we had like a Kanban board, and for some things there were specialists, and we'd write people's initials on the card because they were the people that had to do it. Otherwise, as soon as you finish the task, you'd go and get a card and do the next one. And I kind of used to love that. And then for me as the manager, it made my life so much easier, because I could stand up, and we used to do stand-ups on a Monday morning after we'd had coffee and talked about our weekends, and we could talk about what needed to be done. And for me, it was just, that was the only conversation that we had. We did that for, I don't know, 38 minutes or something, which is probably a bit too long for a stand-up. But if we were going through everything, yeah. So you've got to be able to articulate it to yourself. That's the first thing. So you've got to know what you need to talk about before you talk about, right? That's the A, articulate. So the C is communicate. And there's so many surveys. I think Harvard did one a few years back that showed almost 70%, so almost 3/4 of managers are uncomfortable communicating with staff. Again, it's another skill that we think managers have got. This ability to communicate. It's really not. It's for my workshops, I've mentioned this in the past, I spend the whole first half of day one talking about personality and communication, because we learn from our parents, who aren't great role models. So for managers, if you're communicating to your staff, what you need to do is to make sure that the message is simple, right? It's as simple as it can be. So you're thinking about the language to use so that the other person understands, right? So it needs to be simple so that they understand it. Not only that, it demonstrates your understanding, because you've actually given it some thought. It builds trust, it builds confidence, it's honest, it's transparent, it's all of these things. Simplicity. But you've got to keep it simple, straightforward. And then you've got to think about the other person, right? So where empathy plays a part. How do they like to receive information? Too often we have communication breakdowns because managers communicate messages in the default style. So for me, my default style is lots of passion, lots of energy, lots of arm waving, thinking off the top of my head. That's kind of my default personality style. So I have to work really hard not to do that. If you're an action-oriented person, your default style is direct, it's bold, not so much with the niceties, right? It doesn't mean that you're an idiot, right? Well, not all of you. It doesn't, right? But it's just direct. If you're a people person, you're warm, you're friendly. Hello, how are you? How was your weekend? And if you're more of a detailed person, your communication style, you kind of like to keep yourself to yourself, right? And these are all different. There's no right, there's no wrong. In fact, for our teams, what we need is a mix of, we need a mix of personalities. So as a manager, you need to be thinking, how do I need to deliver the message? Is it more analytical? Is it more personal? Is it more functional? Is it more intuitive? All of those things. What you want to be able to do is to provide context and then content aligned with that person's personality preferences. So kind of during the meeting, they know that you're talking to them and you're delivering it in a way that they understand. All right, don't downplay the kind of how hard it can be to communicate someone else's preferences. It's a skill you need to learn. It takes time, but you should learn it. And then the D, so that's A, C, and then D is discuss. So this is where it turns. So the first bit is you laying out your expectations, and then you want to have a discussion. So you want to get out any kind of, frustration, confusion, any apathy. You really want to get to the point where at the end of the kind of expectation setting, you've got full engagement. Full engagement around not only what needs to be done, but how as well. And so that's why a big part of setting expectations requires that real cultural anchor, that real understanding of what behaviours are expected of me and how do I contribute to the team in terms of my performance. If you've got a cultural agreement, if you've got a well-defined culture, then it's easy then for everybody to hold each other to expectations, and that reduces the burden on the manager. And managing people is one of the hardest things that you can do. You hear all the time, and as a parent, I've said it as well, it's like, having kids is really tough. But then you end up managing other people's kids as they get older. We don't often think of it in that way. You're managing somebody's 40-year-old baby. You really are, and sometimes they still act like that. But that's what we do. It's really, really hard to do. So that discussion is, you want to make sure that people understand what's expected of them, and this is their opportunity to ask questions. Now, this is not about you dictating what needs to be done. One of my favorite business books is a book called Turn the Ship Around by L. David Marquet, and he says in it, don't preach and hope for ownership, which I love. Because if you tell people what to do, they're going to go back and go, I'm doing it because you're telling me I have to do it. Right? You want to discuss it such that that person recognizes that they're the owner and they're the ones that have to do it. And you're going to say things like, is it clear? If you had one question, what would it be? Like, open-ended questions, not have you got that? They'll either say yes or no. Okay, so that's the C is to get to the D is to do discussion, and then the last C is confirm. And at that point, what we want to do is go, okay, good, we understand, off you go. And then your job is to make sure that they feel, like I said, empowered to do it. Your job is to make sure that they've got full autonomy. Full autonomy. So you're not going to be checking up, you're not going to be micromanaging, but what you are going to do is check in and check they're doing okay. All right, so you're just going to say, listen, I'll check in with you on Tuesday, I'll see how you're getting on. If you need anything, I'm here. Right, but again, think, it's a personality thing. Is you can't, and I meant to use the phrase set and forget at the start, but it's true when it comes to actually delivering on expectations as a manager. It's your responsibility to check in with people. You can't just assume that they're going to do it. Okay, because often we don't want to speak up because we think it will make us look silly, or we're worried about people's perceptions, which often speaks a lot to the culture. Or else we just get swamped with work. Some people are so good at saying yes to everything that they just put themselves in a massive hole and just can't get everything done. So get to the confirmation piece. Now for me, this is where I used to use email, except in that one case with the stand-up, because it was all stuck up on a board. So if you're setting it, kind of having a one-to-one meeting, I would drop them an email and go and just say something like, Colin, just confirming the expectations for this week. And it was about outputs or outcomes. It wasn't about hours worked or, my expectation is you're here 9 to 5. It's no way to garner trust when you're kind of dictating the hours that people, and I get, for some people, they have specific hours to work and that's part of the expectation when you're rostered on. I understand that. But that's that confirmation. What you want to do is to create this kind of foundation on which people can build their weeks. They know what they need to get done. And also you've got a mechanism to say, oh, well, we agreed on Monday that XYZ needed to be done. Because believe it or not, I know you find this hard to believe, but some people don't actually perform to expectations all the time. And so you do need that foundation to go back if they don't deliver and have a little bit of empathy to find out why, but then to help refocus them. So 4-step process for setting great expectations. Articulate, communicate, discuss and agree, and then confirm. ACDC. Go forth and do it. Have a great day wherever you are in the world. Look forward to talking again soon. Ta-ra for now.